Welcome back. I'm Caitlin from Deliberate Dandelions, where we are intentionally creating extraordinary lives. Today we're going to talk about what to do when you're feeling stuck and no longer know what to believe, and how to take some action steps so you can feel some forward momentum. There's a lot of information and disinformation floating around right now, probably more so than ever. People seem to be at odds over their sources and who's telling the truth on every last detail. Sources that we used to hold as our truth tellers seem to have failed us, and even alternative sources can be questionable. It's hard to know what to listen to and what to believe, and it's also hard to know if you're believing the right thing when maybe your friends and family are believing something different than you, and you start to question yourself. And there's also this concept of, are we fighting some kind of war? There's so much civil unrest. People are concerned about it leading to a civil war. Some people talk about it being a spiritual war. And in my mind, I conceptualize it best as an energetic war. So let's kind of break these pieces down and figure out how we can take some steps to move to a better place where we feel better and we kind of feel like we have some forward movement and are no longer stuck in this place where we feel helpless. So first, I'd like to talk about your general belief system. You might find that most people, maybe nobody, has the exact same belief system as you. Maybe your politics match up with somebody, but your spiritual beliefs do not. Maybe your spiritual beliefs match up, but you approach it differently. And nobody's exactly the same as you, and yet we're all supposed to coexist. Some people feel like there needs to be a right and a wrong, a black and a white answer, and other people find it more comfortable to live in the areas of shades of gray, if you will. And who's right? Who's wrong? And if I'm right, does that mean I should fight with somebody else who thinks the opposite way that I should? Now we know where that leads us, and nobody wins when that happens. So how can everybody have different ideas and get along? Does that seem like an impossible idea? I'd like to think, in my mind, no, it's not impossible. That people can create their own wonderful life and not infringe upon the rights of others, to not belittle their beliefs or what they hold true, as long as it follows a certain approach. So what is that approach? One of my favorite tools that I downloaded a long time ago, I often reference and I pull up when I'm feeling stuck. Something called the emotional scale. So on the emotional scale, you can see that there are a list of emotions. The very top of the emotional scale, number 1, you see the feelings of love, joy, appreciation, clarity, empowerment, and freedom. Those emotions tend to feel best when we're experiencing them in their purest form. We as humans radiate at a certain level of frequency or vibration. Everything has a frequency, whether we're talking about a human, an animal, a carrot, or a table. Everything has a vibration to it. And I invite you to do some research on your own to understand the science of it and to check what I'm saying. Don't just take my word for it. But when things are vibrating at a higher level, they are typically vibrating in this area where there's an experience of love, appreciation, joy, freedom, and other emotions that are considered a high vibration emotion. So when you see people saying that they're sending you good vibes, or maybe positive thoughts, or even prayers, truly, in essence, it's all the same frequency. What they're sending you, what they're putting out into the universe, is a high vibration. And the law of attraction teaches us that like attracts like. So if you're putting out a high vibration of positivity, of love, of joy, of good feeling thoughts, then high vibration activity will occur around those thoughts. If you dig a little deeper into the science of vibrations, you can find that disease formed in the body has a very low frequency. And it's an interesting science if you really want to look into it. But disease matches a frequency that's not associated with those high vibration feelings. In fact, if we look back at the emotional scale, we can see that when you drop down to the bottom and you're experiencing feelings like hatred, jealousy, unworthiness, depression, despair, and the like, it's a very low vibration. It's a negative vibration where you are not moving in an area of freedom and joy. It's the total opposite. And so what happens is the vibration gets lower or slower, if you will. And it's hard to go from feeling hatred to love in the same moment. And so what's easier, more attainable, is if you look back at the scale, to move from perhaps anger to even just taking a step up to being discouraged or even blame. Now that doesn't seem like it'd be great, but if you're in a state where you're about to have an experience of violent rage and you can take it to a calm state of blaming, then maybe you can move up the scale to being disappointed, acknowledging that something didn't work out the way you wanted it to. And from there, maybe you can move into just being irritated or pessimistic that things aren't going to work out for you. Again, that's not where you want to land, but it's a better feeling thought to move up the line. And then eventually, as you climb higher and higher, you can cross over to get to a place where you might just be content with the way things are, move into an area of acceptance, and then maybe become hopeful and move higher and higher until you find a place of being happy with the way things are, up to experiencing joy and appreciation. There is a ton of information out there that explains how the earth has its own frequency of vibration. And you might hear people talking about the Great Awakening. You might hear people talking about moving from a 3D to 5D. And what the heck does any of that mean? Well, as people experience a collective frequency where more and more people are willing to express and experience happiness, even just simply being content versus the negative lower side, the collective vibration rises. And as people move towards love and that ultimate high frequency vibration, so too does the earth. And there is plenty of literature out there on this. There are tons and tons of podcasts and YouTube videos and books and wonderful resources. I didn't create this. I've just been studying it for a long time. And so if you feel like you just don't know where to turn, what to do, what to believe, right and wrong, and how that plays out in your own life, then you can use this scale to kind of check yourself. And what I mean by that is, if you are experiencing and expressing happiness, joy, appreciation, love, then it doesn't matter what political party you belong to. It doesn't matter which church you attend or how you express your belief in a higher power, or how you appreciate the earth. Perhaps you demonstrate an awareness and respect for Mother Earth as your spiritual practice. And as long as you're doing that from a source of love, you're contributing to the collective frequency, and you're moving the earth to that higher vibration. Now, I could talk for hours about this and how it relates to the energetic war that we can acknowledge on some level we're feeling when we just feel like something is off all around us. Whether it's people's health that is scaring and worrying you right now, or civil unrest happening in our cities, or maybe it's the more ongoing problems, drugs, poverty, hunger. The law of attraction teaches that the more you focus on the negative, you give awareness to it, you give energy to it, it fuels more of the negative. When you consider something a war or a battle, it becomes that. When you flip it to the other side and you focus on everyone being fed, everyone being healthy, happy, safe, cared for, protected. If you're not worried so much about arguing over the tax rate because everybody has enough, and you're focused on everyone having enough and understanding that there is more than enough on this planet for everyone to have everything they need, then you're no longer putting energy towards the negative. I spent a lot of time studying the research on youth development, and a lot of the science demonstrates that when you focus on risk factors such as drug use, violence, negative attitudes towards their community, their school, their families, that you can't make a lot of progress in moving those numbers to a better place, or I should say decreasing those numbers. But when you put energy into what's considered a protective factor, like positive attachment to communities, schools, a religious practice, when they're concerned about their academic performance, healthy behaviors, healthy lifestyles, feeling like they have a sense of belonging with their friends and they're generally happy. When you put energy into building the protective factors, we see tremendous outcomes. We see the positive numbers skyrocket, which in turn helps decrease those negative numbers. That is a scientific piece that can prove that when you focus on the good, more good happens. It's not just a catchphrase. It's not just something that people post on social media, focus on the good, and they think that it's going to change the world just by putting it out there. Well, that might help. Actually taking that step of focusing on the good, of truly committing your daily practice to finding the good in your day. Every night I ask my son the same question. I say, what was great about today? And he picks something. Whatever was great about his day at 5 years old is usually different than what I pick about my day. But then when he returns the question to me, we discuss what was great about my day, and we focus on the best part. And in our house, that's just our simple act of resistance, if you will, to resisting going to the negative, to focusing on what went wrong. And sometimes we feel helpless and we feel like we don't know where to turn or what we can do to make the world a better place. And we get overwhelmed because it seems like no matter how many charities we volunteer to or money we donate, the job that we take that might be in public service or in healthcare, maybe you're in food production, just doesn't seem to be enough. It doesn't do enough, and always trying to catch water with open hands. It can be defeating. It can feel like there's no purpose in moving forward. So when you take that act of resistance or rebellion to embrace that positive practice, we talked a lot about meditating in other videos, and that's the way I prefer to wake up in the morning and to go to sleep at night. And talked about yoga in another video, which is a form of moving meditation. I write appreciation lists when I'm feeling down or feeling stuck or worried. Oftentimes I do something called rewrite the story, where I actually write down in my notebook how I want something to play out, what I want people to say, and go back and forth, and how something can work out really well. Or I write down affirmations, intentions. Perhaps you like to write out prayers, or you like to go for a run, walk around on the ground barefoot. Maybe you enjoy just walking through the woods, or fishing, being out on a boat, breathing fresh air. All of these things raise your personal vibration. They raise your frequency to a point where you're moving up that emotional scale. And so you're contributing to peace on earth, if you will. You're contributing to this collective feeling of love and joy when you're experiencing it on your own. Sometimes people try to take to their social media pages and think if they can post something that is eye-catching enough, nasty enough, big enough, loud enough, that it will convince other people that they're wrong. Sometimes people think that if they can demonstrate an act of violence, that their way is the right way, they'll get enough followers or attention to continue on their path of what they seem to be fighting for. But we know in the end that only leads to death and destruction, and that is not serving the good of mankind. And whether or not you believe that certain things, certain changes need to happen, violence and destruction is moving against that idea of raising the vibration of this earth. It doesn't contribute to the Great Awakening, which is the unlocking of minds to understand their soul purpose and what we're doing here as the human race. It doesn't help move us forward as a civilization when it's pulling down that vibration. And so a way to check yourself and to have your own little act of taking a stand is to use an emotional scale, get in touch with yourself, go within, quiet your mind, figure out what you're feeling, put a name to it, and figure out what it is that you can do, that you enjoy doing, to take it a step higher, to take that positive step forward and to raise your own vibration. If this seems like pure craziness to you, well, one, you probably didn't end up here on this video. But if you find yourself here and you just don't know if anything that I'm saying is true or will work for you, it doesn't hurt to try. The worst that can happen is that you find you're happier by moving towards happiness, that you feel lighter and experience more joy in moving towards that. And so if that's the worst case scenario, then I think that works out pretty well for all of us. I would love to talk about this more. I plan to in future videos. I thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. Please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you again soon.